Okay, so the next file that we're going to edit is kp liberation config. We're just going to open that up. As you can see, I didn't talk about this previously, but I have some color schemes going on. This is part of the syntax highlighting. It's saying, okay, all this green stuff is comments, which means that the engine ignores that. You can see this is just for a human to be able to read and understand, you know, like what's going on here. Okay, so this is an example of a variable that we can see. This is an array that is filled with all of the class names, which is what the engine is looking at, the game engine, and reading. So every object, no matter what you name it, has a class name. And for instance, if I put down two of a specific type of Humvee, each one of those shares the same class name. So if I apply something to the class name, it applies it to both of them. So if I had hundreds of them, it would apply it to all however many there are. So like I said, this is a variable name. This corresponds to, in the object inits, I can look up, oh, this is the same variable name, and it's saying to make all of those vehicles a ACE medical vehicle. We don't really use that. It's fine to leave it. It's not going to matter or change things for us, but the functionality is there for in the future if you want to. I usually don't edit this array because, like I said, we don't really use it. It's not really important. This would be like the locations boost training kind of thing, but it's not necessary to edit that. Same thing with these medical facilities; they're not needed. ACE crates. I'm not really sure what this is for. I think this is like the crew served stuff. So again, this is something that I don't really worry about. What I am interested in is setting up the presets. So this is essentially what configuration we're going to run, and that'll be the next part of the video. Will go directly into this. Right now it's set to run preset number 6, which is an RHS USAF configuration. You can see there's a lot of configurations here. I could just go, okay, we want to play as Marines. I'm going to put in number 18 here, 18, and then we would be U.S. Marines in the desert configuration, and that would be fine. That would work fine. Normally, what I do is I change this to number 0, which is custom, and I go on my merry way and I hack away at the custom preset. So I'm going to show you that here. So I'm going to change the blue 4 preset. Its value equals 0. I'm going to change the op 4 preset for its value to equal 0. I usually don't like make a custom preset for the resistance, but I have in the past. It's kind of like, you know, what are you doing? What map are you on? I think that maybe Takistani locals might work for Ila Duala, so that sounds fun. So I'm gonna hit 7 on that, and civilians, we're gonna go with Takistani civilians because why not? Also, you know, which arsenal preset do we want to use? Here's what I'm going to do. Let's see, what is the Altus one? First, I'm just going to double check before I make some goofball maneuver and tell you guys to do the wrong thing. So I'm looking at the, yeah, okay, so 0, like I thought. So I'm going to leave the arsenal configuration, oh, excuse me, indigestion. I'm going to leave the arsenal configuration as 0. Fuel consumption, you know, these are presets that work really well for Altus, but maybe because I have a smaller map, I want to change these because, I don't want the guys being able to fly a jet around for 35 minutes. I want them to refuel every 15 minutes or whatever. So you can set these tick rates, and this is this is when the vehicle is at 0% throttle. This is when the vehicle is between like 25% and 75%, I believe, and then this is when it's running full throttle. I'm pretty sure. So yeah, you can change those if you want to have vehicles run out of fuel more quickly. I usually don't change any of this stuff. Pardon me. I usually don't change any of this stuff in here. It has to do with what side's fighting what. I would just leave this stuff alone. The FOB range. This is how far away a player can place an object in the build menu from the FOB building. So I usually set this to 300. Seems like a nice enough size. Players can build smaller. Players can't always build bigger. You can change the halo jump altitude if you don't want to fall from 2,500 feet or if you want to fall from higher all the time. These are the mission costs for the FOB hunting, convoy ambush, search and rescue. It's all actually pretty well documented here. I do tweak these sometimes. Usually it's either a reduction on one and an increase on the other. This is the percentage of reduction that secondary objectives give. You want to stay positive, which means above 55%. If it goes below, above 50%. If it goes below 50%, then it's always creating more aggro than it's reducing. So if you go below 50% and you run a side mission, your aggro will go up with CSAT instead of down. So I would recommend staying above 0.5 there. This is how long it takes to produce a resource. So at your factories or whatever, it's going to take essentially 30 minutes to produce one resource when the resource multiplier is set to 1. So if the resource multiplier gets set higher so that it's 3 times, then this will cut it down to 10 minutes per resource. I'll go into that a little bit later. This is the sector size. This means how far away you have to be before stuff starts to pop. This is where you can capture the sector. So this is the actual size of the capture zone. This is the size of the enemies have detected you and are now going to spawn. 1,000 is pretty good. That way it allows aircraft to operate in a larger AO, and they, so long as they're maintaining a reasonable altitude, they're not going to overspawn things accidentally. Let's see, multiplier for defenders in buildings. This is the bias to putting a defender in a building. If you had it at 0.75, then it would have a 3/4 bias to throw a defender in a building rather than putting them on a street. Size of enemy battle groups. I usually don't edit all this stuff, but these are all pretty self-explanatory things. Let's see, civilian killing penalties. Is there anything else in here? I don't really think there's anything else in here. Yeah, okay. So there's nothing else in here that I'm going to change or worry about, except for this. This is I'll talk about this at the end of the episode. That way it's optional, because this can be an absolute time sink for you if you want to do it or not. It's kind of really doesn't pay big dividends to edit that. Let's see, vehicle repair resources. Again, these are class names that you can enter in, and I'll go into that in a few minutes when we actually start adding things to a configuration. So that is liberation config. Okay, so now that we have told the KP Liberation config to load custom configs, we're going to go ahead and set those up. So let's see. I'm going to go into the presets folder, and I'm going to open up the blue 4 folder, and I'm going to go down to custom. And so this is the configuration that it is going to now load at the start, and it's going to allow me to change what vehicles I use and where. So in order to easily do this, what I will do is I'll open up Arma 3. I'm going to open it up in VR. I don't need to save a scenario or anything like that because I'm just going to be copying and pasting stuff. So I'm in my SQF, and okay, I want to know what I want to use for the main HQ building. So if I wanted to change this, I could go into objects, and maybe I can find, I don't know, let's see if I can find some dinky little structure, military, let's see, barracks with interior. Come on, there's no headquarters. HQ, here we go, perfect. Looks like HQ USMC. Oh, that's great. Check it out, we've got this cool ass APC here. Yeah, this is gonna do. So I'm gonna log, I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm gonna use some of Eden Enhanced's functionality here. This is really where it starts to shine. I'm gonna right click on the object, I'm gonna go to log classes to clipboard. I'm gonna tab out, and I'm going to paste it. So now when the guy builds his fob, this is what's going to get plopped down. Maybe they're not going to be 2035 NATO, and I'm going to change the multi-purpose mobile respawn helicopter known as Spartan 1. So I don't know. What do I want them to use? Let's go U.S. Army. Although there's probably a preset already for this, and I can rip a lot of that stuff from that preset, but just for the sake of argument and showing you guys what's going on, I would recommend not using the VIV stuff for this because you want to be able to put guys in it. So I'm going to plop this down. I don't need the units in it. You can leave them in or you can delete them. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to right click on here again. I'm going to log classes to clipboard. I'm going to tab out, and where it says Huron type, I'm going to double click in there, and I'm going to paste it. So now they're going to be using CH-47 as the start helicopter, and I can go through here, and this is all very self-explanatory of, you know, what do I want to change. I can change, you know, the fuel crates to explosive fuel crates from the Grand Mod if I want, or, excuse me, or what have you. If I keep scrolling down, I'm going to have this the build menu now separated into categories that are reflected in game. So the first one is the Infantry Units category, and we can see that there's prices associated with these guys. Generally, it's broken up this way by default for soldiers to only take supply. You can see the infantry units is an array that has further arrays defined in it. The first element in the sub-arrays are the soldiers' class names, which are the same way as getting a vehicle class name. It works exactly the same. If I put a man down, let's say a medic, I can right click on him, log classes to clipboard, and now I can change the, let's see, where is he? Medic. This is recon medic. Is there a medic, a regular medic? Here we go. I can change the regular medic out. And the price hasn't changed either. So it's important to note that I've only, you know, replaced the class name. Maybe this guy's better. Maybe he should cost 80 supply. So there's a whole economic tweaking that you can do, and it's totally up to you as to what you put and where. However, in this category, you're going to want to keep in mind balance, economic balance, as well as how soon you want players to have access to an asset. So the first part, the economic balance, I usually try and compare similar values. Like I'll look for it. If I'm going to put an Abrams tank in here, I'm going to look for an MBT that already exists in here. So I can, find that under heavy vehicles, and I already know this class name, but I can look over here and see that, okay, this is the default slammer. So if I was going to add, maybe a challenger, you can see that's already in there. I'm going to have similar costing values for it. Maybe if the challenger is a little bit inferior, I might reduce it by, a narrow margin to, allow other players to be like, do I want this shitty tank for a cheaper price or this really good tank, and just wait, a couple minutes for a resource pop. Fill all this stuff out. Make sure you put this stuff in the right categories, air vehicles in the right category. It's not going to screw anything up if you put a air vehicle into the heavy vehicles category. It's just that's where it's going to appear for the players, and the players are going to be like, why is there a hummingbird in the heavy vehicles category? So, or little bird, whatever it's called. So there's that. Also, static vehicles, you can add anything to. Really, there's no limit. You could put, you can put whatever you want in here, the SAM system, or whatever. But down here at the bottom where the buildings are, this is all the fluff that players can put down that either equates to walls or props and stuff. So you can add whatever you want in this category. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice that within each array, each element, this is the first element or the 0 element. This is the second element, third and fourth element. So it would be 0, 1, 2, 3. Each element is separated by a comma, and the last element does not have a comma. This is very important. If you do not set up all of your subarrays and or final arrays in this fashion, then it'll kick an error. It'll stop reading everything wherever it was. It will stop executing every script, and it'll be a half-loaded scenario. So what I advise you to do is, if you're editing these categories, do not go to the bottom. Stay away from the bottom. Go into the center. Go past one of the arrays where there's a comma. Push the enter key. Maybe push it a couple times. Leave yourself an editing space. Grab one of the lines up, copy it, and paste it. And now I've got everything that I need. I can just change the class name, and that comma's there, and I haven't screwed up the end of an array. That goes for any of the coding that you do, I guess pretty much anywhere, but specifically in this syntax. So there's adding vehicles, there's balancing the economy, and for limiting player access to vehicles, let's say I don't want them to be able to land with an MRLS. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and down to the bottom is yet another array. I can edit it just like any other array. I can find some space in the middle and create a little editing space, and I could copy a line. You see me, I'm clicking on the number to grab the line. So that grabs the entire line, and I can paste it down. So now I can add a class name, and if I don't want them to run an MRLS from the deck, I'm going to put that class name on there. And what this is going to do is it's going to, in game, it's going to look for those military markers, and it's going to say, okay, this class name is not allowed to be built by the players unless they own that military base. So it's going to automatically associate and assign these. This array can be huge. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have pound for pound military bases. It will still restrict them. It may only show one on the map, but when the players go into the build menu and they select the the asset, it will say restricted by such and such military base, no matter whether it's whether it's reflected on the map or not. So that's editing the Blue4 custom preset. You can edit the Op4 custom preset just the same way. You just go into the Op4 folder, resistance folder, civilians folder, and it's all pretty straightforward from there. And that's the second to last. That's the second to last file that you need to edit if you want to. Okay, so the last file that we're going to talk about editing are the mission params, and this is the stuff that you see if you're the administrator and you're in the lobby, and there's that button in the top right that says params. You can always set it up. You can always set it up in the in-game lobby if you want to. This just facilitates jumping in the mission and getting it going quicker, because you won't have to nuance with any of the parameters. They'll already be preset. So I'm in the mission folder. I'm going to click in UI, and I'm going to open mission params. You might get the question, what do you want to open this with? I'm going to open up with Sublime Text 3, of course, and this all looks like a lot of what the fuck's going on here. All right, so there's a little bit of kind of translation that you want to do here. First of all, at the top, you want to make sure that it is set to the first parameter. You're going to set the default to equal 1, and that's whether or not it loads this file. And this file is going to enable you to automate the mission setup process for the rest of the parameters. So in order to interpret this stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the game. I'm going to hit play. I'm going to play in Multiplier. And I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to take me to the lobby. I don't have to launch the scenario. I'm not going to launch the scenario. I'm not interested in that. I'm going to open the parameters list, and I'm going to see, what is this? Load, save parameters? Could this possibly correspond to this line right here? Load, save parameters? I think it does. So I'm setting this up so that when it reads this file, it says, yes, load, save parameters. Next, we're going to see these are just blank spaces. So this is how they have to basically write each one of these lines as either an empty line or it has a title. Mission options right there. Looks pretty cool. Now we have something down here, unit cap. That's the maximum amount of AI units. I have this set to 75%. You don't want to go too much higher than 125. You're going to start experiencing, first of all, it's going to be super difficult because there's going to be a ton of guys. And then secondly, it's going to start loading the server. 75 is really good because CSAT's going to, or the AI is going to throw a bunch of force multipliers at you anyway. So I recommend setting that to 75, which corresponds to one of these values. So you'll see that this doesn't actually list like 75%, 100%, 125%, etc. But what I can do is I can go in game and I can say, okay, what's the first value? Oh, the first value is 50%. Then what I'm going to say is, okay, this first value is 50%. This second value is 75%. Well, that's the value that I'm interested in. And it's listing these values as starting from 0, because this is a computer, and 0 is a value. It's starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total quantities in here. So if you count from 0 to 5, you will get 6. So which one do I want? Well, I want 75%. And I know that it starts at 50. So I know that this first one, which corresponds to 0, is 50%. The second one corresponds to 75%, which is 1. So I'm going to change the value here to 1. And then I'm going to save that. And I'm going to continue doing that as I go through the list. I'm going to want to leave the difficulty at normal. The up for aggressivity, which is basically like how much stuff, how many reinforcements they're going to throw at you. I'll usually normally I'll hover this between normal and strong. Strong seems to be a little bit more difficult, but normal and below should be pretty much easily manageable by a sizable group of players. Hostile presence adapts to player count. Again, as I go down, I'm just going to compare these values. Adapt to player count. Here we have a keyword here. This is really helpful for us. Otherwise, this is really helpful for us because it tells us in English whether or not it's enabled or disabled. Most of these default values are fine. I don't want the players to start with an initial fob, so I'm going to leave that at 0. What are the civilian spawn rates? So this is something that I'm going to have to go back and forth and interpret. This is let's see, civilian activity, which is right past adapt to player count, and I'm going to see there's different values. I like to put this at reduced. So I'm gonna say, well, reduced is 1 less than the value that it's defaulted at, so it's going to be 1 for me. And I'm religiously saving this. Maximum fobs, if you want the players to have, a maximum number of fobs. You can see that these values directly correspond to the text values. So this is what the machine reads, and this is what the user will read. So if I go back in game and I look at maximum number of fobs, I have a list of numbers that directly reflects the values. So there's no translation that I have to do there. Same thing with squad size maximum. Whether or not an attack zone starts with blue for defenders, enabled or disabled, pretty straightforward. We're going to look at a specific value down here, which is the ACE arsenal, arsenal type, ACE arsenal. So this is the Bohemia active arsenal. I recognize the BI, Bohemia interactive. And here's the ACE arsenal parameter. So I'm going to change this value to 1. I'm going to save that. Victory conditions, you can look that up if you want to in a similar way. Here's the revive options for us. Since we play with ACE, we are going to want to set this to 0 and save that. And now everything else is fine the way that it is. You can change these gameplay options if you want to keep going further down into the gameplay options. This is all up to you. I don't really mess with this stuff. The main thing is ACE Arsenal, and to disable the vanilla revive system. Where is that? Revive mode. Yep, revive mode 0. And that is the extent of all of the editing that you have to do to get lib to a map that hasn't already been ported to.